She thought it was just another night, another walk home after a long shift. But the streetlights didn't protect her, and the quiet neighborhood wasn't as safe as it seemed. A single glance, a single prejudice, was enough to turn her world upside down. What happened in those few minutes wasn't an accident. It was the kind of cruelty that had been repeated for generations, hidden in plain sight. Her story is not just about what she endured that night, but about the silence that followed and the truth too many still try to deny. Could this have been prevented, or was it always waiting to happen? For Maya Johnson, life had always been about routine. She worked long hours at the nursing home, cared deeply for her patients, and walked the same path home every night. Neighbors knew her as quiet but kind, someone who never caused trouble, someone who kept to herself. She carried her groceries, checked in on an elderly tenant upstairs, and always made it home before dark. To her, it was just life, ordinary, steady, predictable. But beneath that sense of normalcy, there were cracks she didn't always notice. Whispers when she passed by, stares that lingered too long, the uneasy silence that followed her footsteps. Maya had grown used to it, convincing herself it was nothing. Yet the truth was building quietly, waiting for the night when routine would shatter, and her world would never be the same. Maya's walk home had always been predictable, familiar blocks, cracked sidewalks, the corner store she passed every night. But this time, something felt different. A car rolled slowly down the street behind her, its headlights stretching long shadows across the pavement. She tried to ignore it, clutching her bag tighter, reminding herself it was probably nothing. Yet the sound of the engine stayed with her, low and steady, like it was matching her every step. She turned the corner, hoping it would pass, but instead, the car stopped. The door opened. A man stepped out, his uniform catching the glow of the streetlight. He didn't smile. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just stared. Maya's chest tightened. She had seen that look before, the one that carried judgment before a word was spoken. She kept walking, her pulse quickening, but within seconds, the sound of heavy boots followed her. "Hey!" the man's voice called out. Short, sharp, commanding. Maya froze for half a second but then forced herself forward. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just going home. But the voice came again, louder this time. "Stop right there." Her heart pounded. She knew stories like this, headlines that never seemed far away. People who looked like her stopped for no reason, accused of things they didn't do, situations that escalated in ways they couldn't control. The footsteps drew closer. Maya felt the air shift as the officer reached for her shoulder, but she pulled away, her voice shaking. "I live right here," she tried to say, pointing toward the next block. It didn't matter. His hand gripped her arm tightly, pulling her back. He asked no questions about her name, her address, or her reason for being there. Instead, he demanded to know what was in her bag, why she was out, why she had taken this street. The car's headlights still glared, illuminating the scene like a spotlight. Neighbors' curtains shifted slightly, shadows moving behind glass, but no one came outside. Maya's voice cracked as she explained she had just finished work, that she had groceries, that this was her neighborhood. Still, suspicion filled his eyes. He rifled through her bag without permission, pulling out bread, milk, and fruit, tossing them onto the pavement as if they were evidence of some crime. Maya bent quickly to pick them up, her hands trembling. She wanted to scream, to shout that this wasn't right, but fear tightened her throat. Another car slowed down, a second pair of headlights washing over them. Maya thought, maybe someone will help. Maybe someone will step out. But the car drove off, leaving her alone under the weight of his authority. The officer's voice grew colder. He accused her of loitering, of looking suspicious, of not answering fast enough. Maya knew the truth. He wasn't asking because he needed answers. He was asking to remind her who held the power. Her legs felt weak, her mind racing through every story she had ever heard of encounters like this that ended badly. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to stay calm, but each second stretched longer, the silence broken only by his voice barking questions she couldn't answer fast enough. And then it happened. A second officer appeared from the shadows, drawn by the radio call she hadn't even realized had gone out. 2 uniforms now. 2 pairs of eyes fixed on her like she was dangerous, though her only crime had been walking home. Her groceries lay scattered on the ground. Her arms shook from the grip still clamped around her. The second officer stepped closer, his hand resting near his holster. Maya's stomach dropped. What would happen next? Maya stood frozen under the glare of the headlights, 2 officers circling her like she was prey. The first one still gripped her arm, the second moved closer, his hand hovering near the weapon at his side. The air felt heavier now, charged with something she couldn't control. Her groceries lay scattered across the pavement, bread crushed beneath a boot, fruit rolling into the gutter. It was no longer about suspicion. It was intimidation. "Why are you resisting?" one barked, though she hadn't resisted. She hadn't moved at all. The words landed like a trap, a warning that anything she did next could be twisted into guilt. Maya's pulse raced, her breath shallow. She tried to explain again, her name, her job, her address. But her voice sounded small, drowned out by the shouts. The second officer stepped behind her, boxing her in. For a moment, Maya thought she might collapse. Images flashed through her mind, names she had read, faces she had seen on the news, lives cut short in situations just like this. She knew how quickly routine stops could turn into tragedy. The first officer shoved her against the hood of the car, metal cold against her cheek. Pain jolted down her arm as his grip tightened. She gasped, pleading, but her words were swallowed by the night. He snapped handcuffs around her wrists, as if she were already guilty, as if walking home was a crime. Lights flickered on in houses nearby. Curtains shifted. Eyes were watching but doors stayed shut. Neighbors whispered behind glass, afraid to get involved. The silence of bystanders pressed against Maya's chest harder than the cuffs themselves. She realized in that moment she wasn't just fighting the officers, she was fighting a system that thrived on silence. Her body shook as they searched her pockets, tossing her ID onto the ground. They didn't even glance at it. Proof of who she was didn't matter. Their eyes had already written a story about her, one that erased everything true. The radio crackled. Another voice on the other end asked if backup was needed. The officer holding her down smirked. "No, we've got her under control." Her. Like she wasn't a person, just a problem. Maya's eyes burned. Fear mixed with fury. How many times had she told herself it wouldn't happen to her? That if she worked hard, followed the rules, kept her head down, she would be safe? But here she was, humiliated, restrained, her dignity stripped away on the same street she had called home. She thought of her patients at the nursing home, the ones who trusted her, the ones who saw her as gentle and kind. Would they even recognize her now? She thought of her mother, who always warned her to be careful, to never give anyone a reason. What would her mother say if she saw her like this? A light clicked on across the street. A neighbor held up a phone, recording. The officers noticed. Their voices shifted, suddenly more careful, but not enough to release her. One of them hissed, "Put the phone down!" The neighbor didn't move. For the first time that night, Maya felt something stir inside her. Proof. Someone was bearing witness. The officer yanked her upright, cuffs still biting into her wrists. He looked her in the eye, his voice low, threatening. "You people never learn." The words cut deeper than the metal on her skin. They weren't just meant for her, they were meant for everyone who looked like her. The crowd grew. More phones appeared in the dark. A car slowed to watch. Pressure shifted. The officers hesitated, but their grip didn't loosen. Maya's body trembled, but she held her ground. She wasn't safe, not yet, but she wasn't invisible anymore. Her voice cracked, but she forced the words out. "I'm not afraid of the truth." For a second, the street went silent. The weight of her words hung in the air, undeniable, unshakable. And in that silence, it became clear, this moment wasn't just about Maya. It was about everyone who had ever been stopped, silenced, or erased for no reason other than the color of their skin. The headlights still blazed. The cuffs still cut into her wrists. The officers still loomed. But the cameras were rolling. The world was watching. And nothing would ever be the same. The night ended with handcuffs, flashing lights, and fear, but it didn't end in silence. The video captured by Maya's neighbor spread quickly, shared first among friends, then across the city. In the recording, there was no crime. No threat. Just a woman walking home, searched, humiliated, and restrained for nothing. The officers claimed procedure. They filed reports filled with vague words. Suspicious, non-compliant, potential threat. But the footage told another story. It showed groceries scattered on the ground. It showed a young woman pleading for her dignity. It showed the truth. Maya was released hours later, her wrists sore, her body trembling. She walked home through streets that suddenly felt hostile, every shadow carrying the memory of what had happened. She wanted to disappear, to bury the moment and move on. But when she saw her face online, when she read comments from strangers saying they saw her, they believed her, something shifted. She realized this wasn't just about her anymore. Community groups reached out. Local leaders demanded answers. Protests formed outside the police station, not in anger alone, but in solidarity. People carried signs with her name, reminding the city that she was more than an incident report. She was a human being. The officers were placed under investigation. Policies were questioned. Meetings were held. And though change moved slower than justice demanded, the conversation couldn't be silenced. Maya's story had forced people to confront what they wanted to ignore, that racism didn't just live in history books or headlines from other towns. It lived here, in their own streets, in the lives of neighbors they thought they knew. For Maya, healing wasn't instant. The bruises faded, but the memory stayed. Every time she walked home, she felt the weight of that night. Yet she refused to let fear define her. She joined community meetings, spoke to schools, and stood with families who had faced the same. She turned her pain into something bigger, a voice that carried further than she ever imagined. Her patients at the nursing home noticed the change too. She wasn't quieter now. She was stronger. She told them, gently, about dignity, about courage, about never letting someone else's prejudice write your story for you. And when the elderly man she cared for clasped her hand one afternoon and whispered, "I'm proud of you," she felt the truth of what she had become. Because this was never just about one woman. It was about the countless others who never had their stories recorded, whose names were lost in silence. Maya's story broke through not because it was unique, but because it was painfully familiar. And so we are left with a question, one we cannot ignore. How many more times must this happen before change is more than a headline, more than a moment, more than a promise quickly forgotten? Maya's story is not just hers. It belongs to every person who has walked home in fear, every family left asking why, every community still waiting for justice. The cameras may have saved her life that night. But cameras alone cannot save the next. Only action can. Only awareness, accountability, and courage can. The light from that phone on a quiet street exposed more than two officers. It exposed a system. A silence. A choice we all face: look away, or finally see. So ask yourself, the next time someone like Maya is stopped, humiliated, or silenced, will you be the neighbor who closes the curtain? Or will you be the one who turns on the light?